Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. The real question is, how many times will Brian drop his mic today?
Zero.
You
I'm calling it out.
I'm just gonna hold it the whole time. Hello.
Hi, my name's Brian. I like movies. Anyway,
NPR version. What's this?
we can make that really weird real fast.
I really like this movie. It's a lot of fun.
Siblets. We've totally went so off the rails to start this episode. But anyway, guys, this is episode 48. I actually had to look behind me to see what episode it was. It's episode 48. We're talking about 5 more movies that came out during this week in movie history. And like I said last week, outside of one film, as you can see the movies behind me, it's 80s week. Every movie is from the 80s except for one. This has definitely been, I feel like this week has been pretty much like all revisited to me. Either most of these movies are, I haven't seen them in 20 plus years to the point where I barely remember them, to the point where they feel like a first time watch. And then of course there's 2 of them that I've actually, watched recently or watched quite a bit of. So they were, very well common for me. What are your thoughts on this week's movies?
Kind of the same. I mean, there was 3 of them that I'd watched probably within the last 2 years or something like that. But it's still all kind of revisited movies because they're all like, ones from kind of way back when. They aren't really the first movies that jumped to people's mind for the most part. But they aren't ones that you've completely forgotten about either. So it is kind of feel like a revisited week.
Well, especially since we're in the first week of December, none of these are holiday films. Not a single one. None of these
films tend to get released like before Thanksgiving so they can play for the whole season. So
exactly, but none of these movies scream December release. They scream like
one of them
March. Exactly. Good job. But anyway, we are not going to start with Scream. We're going to hold off on that one. We are going to start off with a film that personally, we were talking about this. I only really remember like the last 20, 30 minutes of this film. And even as I was watching this movie, I didn't remember pretty much the first 2/3 of this film. But then as soon as we get to one certain part, I was like, okay, now I remember this movie. We are talking about the Eddie Murphy action comedy, The Golden Child. The Golden Child came out December 12th, 1986, had a budget of $25 million, had a weekend opening of $11.54 million. It was number 1 its opening weekend and spent 5 weeks at the number 1 spot. It had a finished box office of $79.81 million. Yeah, I mean, Eddie Murphy, late 80s into the early, mid 90s. I mean, Eddie Murphy was hands down probably one of the most popular actors out there, whether it be for comedies or action comedies, with this and like the Beverly Hills Cop series and stuff like that. But yeah, for me, I remember watching probably the last 20, 30 minutes of this film repeatedly. It was one of those, and you know this because we've talked about this, where you always catch a movie at the same exact spot.
Yeah.
It is always when they get to Tibet and he's doing the test. That or the car chase at the end. I always catch this film at those 2 points, to the point where I don't remember the movie prior to those scenes. And as I was going back and watching this film, I'm watching it and I'm like, have I ever watched like the first hour of this film, or have I always just ever caught them in Tibet? And that is literally, I think this might have been the first time I actually saw the first hour of this film, because I do not recall anything in the States. I thought this film, for the most part, was all in Tibet. Not, where were they at? Like Brooklyn, Los Angeles?
I don't remember, honestly.
Yeah, I can't really remember. But yeah, I did not remember the first hour of this film. But I like Golden Child, or at least the last 30 minutes of Golden Child. I always thought it was a very fun film, at least, like I said, the parts that I remembered. But what were your thoughts on The Golden Child?
So I'm kind of the same way. Like I said, I just rewatched this one actually probably within the last year or so. But before that, I hadn't watched it since probably the 80s. Or if I did, I don't remember. But it's the same way where there's only a few small scenes or even lines like the I want the knife, things like that. There's little things here and there that for some reason I remember certain lines from it, but I don't remember most of the movie. I remember the general plot of it, but I don't remember most of the individual scenes. And I think that's actually probably true of most people. I mean, this is, even though it's kind of Eddie Murphy during his prime, I think this is one of the ones that's more forgotten about or overlooked. And I don't know the reason for that. I mean, it wasn't a big blockbuster kind of thing. It is something a little bit different for him. But it wasn't a bad movie.
It was number one at the box office for 5 straight
Well,
weeks.
you know what's the weird thing is this movie is got a whole lot of similarities to the same year it came out, Big Trouble in Little China. Okay, I mean it even shares several of the same actors are in both movies. But this one made more in its opening weekend, and that one made in its entire run. And yet that one has become the far more remembered movie. It's become like this cult classic.
Yeah, I was like, it's more
big deal.
culty because of what it is.
Whereas this one, and people remember, oh yeah, I remember this movie exists, but nobody remembers this movie or listed along their favorites, things like that. But rewatching it now, I mean, it's I wouldn't call it one of Eddie Murphy's best movies, but he's definitely made many, many, many worse movies. It's kind of a mid-range thing for me. There's definitely funny parts to it. I did think it's interesting that in this movie, he's essentially the only star in this movie. I mean, there's recognizable actors in the supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Dance isn't necessarily a star at this point.
Right,
I mean,
Charles Dance, and even some of the guys like James Hong and some of these people you see in a ton of movies, and especially movie fans will know who some of these people are. But like most, even Eddie Murphy's starring movies usually has like a recognizable co-star, whether it be the female or the sidekick or the partner, things like that. And this is pretty much just here's Eddie and then a bunch of other people. And so I don't know if maybe this is a point in his career where he started getting a little bit bigger head and so on, starring himself. I don't know, but it wasn't a bad movie. It's just one of those ones that kind of, it was amusing.
What was weird for me, and like I said, first time I 100% think this is the first time I've actually watched this movie from beginning to end, is that I feel like the first hour, it's almost like Eddie Murphy wants to play this kind of almost serious.
Yeah, like he finds lost children, and it's like
lost children, and then you have that scene where he finds the missing dead girl, and also like it feels like he wants to do like almost like a Denzel kind of like serious role, but then like halfway through the film or in certain scenes, he's like, "Oh wait, I'm Eddie Murphy," and just throw a joke in. It's just like
that's just it. Is a lot of times just throwing a joke out of nowhere. It almost felt like he took this. He wanted to do a movie in the vein of Beverly Hills Cop without it being Axel Foley, so he kind of tried to take almost the same character and put him in something different situation.
But yeah, it's kind of all over the place on its tone, because like, yes, there's a supernatural element with the golden child and the, I don't know if they ever really call what the group is that are like have the kid. I forgot what they called the group. But and then you got Eddie, like I said, for the most part, kind of being serious, but then all of a sudden it just goes full on Eddie Murphy, which is his bread and butter, especially back then. And when it goes to full on Eddie Murphy, that's when the movie starts to become enjoyable. When he's trying to do this whole kind of serious act and try to find this missing girl who, and then you have the whole biker fight kind of thing. It's not gripping. It's not really hooking me. It really wasn't until, shockingly, when they went to Tibet, that the movie actually started getting good for me. Like I was watching, I was like, I remember enjoying this movie more.
I didn't think it was bad. I just think it was a very different movie.
I didn't think it was bad. I just wasn't having fun. I wasn't enjoying the movie. I was just kind of like, this is kind of dull. But then as soon as we went to Tibet and you got oh god, what are they? What's his name? Not Hong. The old they just call him
Victor Wong, the old man.
Wong. Yeah. When he first shows up, all of a sudden I kind of got this almost like what's the word I'm thinking of? Like fondness, like, oh yeah, Golden Child. I remember this movie now, and stuff like that. It felt like the last 30 minutes, which obviously is the part that I remember, is the best parts of the film. When he has to do the trial and when he gets upset because old man took his $100 bill and he's still bitching about it on the whole rowboat ride over there. And then you got the trial, and then you got the very, very rushed fight at the end for Charles Dance. But that's to me what makes Golden Child like a really good film. That first hour, I felt like it was trying to do set pieces for way too long, and it just didn't hit its stride until they left and went to Tibet. And like I said, it was just a weird film, and I think that's maybe probably why Golden Child is remembered more for how I remember it, the last half of the film, than the whole movie as a whole, because it just feels very uneven. I mean, I enjoyed the cast. I think Dance does a great job. I love the airport scene with him and Eddie Murphy, because it was one of those scenes where Eddie Murphy, and this is what I've always liked about Eddie Murphy. He can be funny, but he's clever. So you have that back and forth between him and Dance at the airport. Like, yeah, you can tell them that I took it, but then this is what's going to happen, and then you ain't going to get the dagger. So what are you going to do? And then he keeps just poking at him, Brother Lucy, and just keeps doing his Eddie Murphy thing. I love that exchange, because that's what makes Eddie Murphy great. It's when he just goes full blown over the top comedy with like hundreds of different versions of himself as different characters. That's what fails Eddie Murphy. It's when Eddie Murphy plays this, I'm the most clever guy in the room. I might not be the smartest. I might not know what's going on, but I'm on top of things, and I am very aware of my surroundings, and I know how to play the surroundings that are around me. Kind of shtick that he does. He did that in Beverly Hills Cop fantastically. And that scene right there, I think, works really well. And then that's kind of what goes on, I think, in the latter half of the film, is where he really doesn't know what's going on. He's just kind of going at it by the seat of his pants. But Eddie Murphy's confidence level of his character through the film is what makes it work. Whereas to me, in the first half of the film, I feel like he's being an entirely different character, and it just feels like a different movie from when they go to Tibet to when he's in the U.S. But I enjoyed it. I just don't remember it. You know, I remember liking it more than I did.
You know, I think also what kind of threw me from this movie was, it's about the abduction of this kid who they think is this holy chosen one, and
I mean,
there's like kind of
he is though,
kind of culture on him and stuff. But I guess I partially didn't remember it, and partially just kind of don't like it that it actually turned out to be supernatural. I mean, he actually has magical powers, and this Charles Dance plays this guy's actually like this demon. I'm like, I think it would have been almost a more interesting movie if it wasn't supernatural. It just kind of seemed, I don't know, out of place for me. But then especially the ending, it just seemed a little abrupt and anticlimactic to me. Like, also just like stab dead, like that's the end.
It was super rushed, because you literally went from, okay, he's trying to find out where the kid is, to was it Randall
Cobb?
Yeah, Randall Cobb. I didn't want to say that because I know it's a football player's name. I was like, I'm thinking of a football player. But he turns good, and then he grabs him, and then he goes to go after Dance, and then Dance just boom, demon, run, and then end of movie.
He just walks up to him, stab, dead. Like, that was it? No.
Yeah, I was just like, I kind of expect, and we could probably chalk that up to special effects budget of the demon, and they couldn't, they just, there's no way to make things look better, so they just had to kind of rush that. But it's like,
which the demon didn't look bad, honestly.
No, the demon didn't look bad at all, but I'm thinking that, like, in terms of having an actual fight with Eddie Murphy, I don't think they probably could have pulled it off. That's probably why they did what they did. But it's one of those things too, where it's like, if you can't do it, don't do it. Come up with a different idea. Have Charles Dance be Charles Dance, just be super powered strong, and have the fight, and then at the very, very end, him go demon and do that. Like, you didn't have to completely just get rid of Charles Dance, because he's a fantastic actor, and I think he was playing the villain role really, really well, but then you completely eliminated him. And that to me was something that really hurt the film. I also really enjoyed Charlotte Lewis, who for the whole time has been like, man, she totally reminds me of Tia Carrere?
Tia Carrere, I can see that.
Tia Carrere, which I was like, oh man, she totally reminds me of her, and I mean that in the best possible way. But but yeah, it's just here's the thing: I am not the biggest fan of Big Trouble in Little China. I think it's a little.
I think it's highly overrated.
I think it is. I think
it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine for what it is. I think it's entirely too wacky in what it does, and I think a Golden Child at least kind of, I don't want to say grounds it, because that's totally not the word I want to use for that. But I think in terms of the two, I would probably watch Golden Child over Big Trouble in Little China, because I guess it feels more real, even though at the very end it goes really over the top supernatural. But yeah, I remember liking it more. Doesn't mean I didn't like it. I think I still gave it like 3.5 stars.
For me, it was about where I remembered. I remember thinking it was enjoyable, but it wasn't like some great movie I love.
I didn't change my score by any means. Like, it was still like, all right, it's right where I'm at. But it was just like, man, that first hour, I don't remember the first hour, and
I didn't just like the first hour as much as you. It was fine. It was just a different movie.
It felt like a different film.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost kind of like a Bruce Willis Striking Distance, but with some humor to it. And then it just went completely like supernatural in the last act, which I enjoyed, but you got to have the tone fit, and that's where it fell off for me. Golden Child, is it on anything?
If your library uses Canopy, it's on there. Otherwise, you're gonna have to rent it somewhere.
So the answer is no.
Also, I'd also like to add, as far as how we keep track of like people who are in multiple movies we've watched throughout the year. This is the second appearance of the dagger. It was the same one used in the Monster Squad, and it was also used in some other movie. Like within 3 years, they used the same prop in 3 different movies. Just thought I'd share that with you.
Are we gonna start keeping track of prop?
No, I just thought they were just reuse props like that.
I didn't even realize that. That's hilarious. I did not even realize that. But we're gonna go ahead and move on to my pick. This is a movie. I always had this movie on. I say that a lot about a lot of the younger movies, but my dad really enjoyed this film, and so he had this on quite a bit. So I remember this movie very, very fondly. I love the 3 leads of this film, more so 2 of them than one of them now, because he turned into a gigantic prick in real life.
He always was. He just hit it better.
Yeah, he hit it better. But I do really like the other 2. But yeah, this was a movie, and I had recently watched it in the last year for trivia purposes. And to me, I think still it's an enjoyable film. We are talking about the comedy Western, The Three Amigos, or just Three Amigos. Three Amigos came out December 12th, 1986, had a budget of $25 million, had a weekend opening of $5.93 million. It was number 2, its opening weekend, and had a budget of $39.24 million. Yeah, I mean, Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, and Martin Short. I mean, we've had... I know we've had Martin Short on the show before. Have we had Chevy and Steve Martin on the show yet? Or is this our first time?
I do not know for sure.
I can't remember if I've seen the other 2. But we've said with Martin Short, when Martin Short goes Martin Shorty, then it's, he's a little over the top. Kind of like when you let Adam Sandler go full Adam Sandler or Will Ferrell go full Will Ferrell. But when you put him with the right mix of people, Martin Short's great. And that person that keeps Martin Short kind of, for the most part, in check is Steve Martin. I mean, they're in at least 3 other films there. You get the 2 Father of the Brides. I want to say they're in another one together. But also, and I mentioned this, was it a week or 2 ago? The Hulu show. What's that?
The TV show you're talking about?
Yeah, TV show. Only Murderers in the Building. Steve Martin and Martin Short are fantastic in it. Martin Short's a little annoying in it, but once again, Steve Martin kind of corrals him in. And then there's Chevy. And even in this film, I think Steve Martin and Martin Short are the 2 standouts. And then Chevy's kind of doing Chevy's thing. Not that Chevy's thing isn't good, but Chevy definitely does feel kind of like the third wheel of this group, where Martin Short and Steve Martin, to me, gel perfectly in this film. This is very much a film of the 80s. If you like these actors and you like this type of comedy back then this movie's going to appeal to you. If you didn't like those actors or like this type of comedy, then yeah, Three Amigos is not going to be your cup of tea. But for me, because of the comedic stylings of these 3 actors and the antics and the little shticks that happen throughout the film, I think this movie works incredibly well. I even think the villain, El Guapo, and even his right-hand man, I forget the character's name, but his number 2, you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
I loved their partnership, the El Guapo and his number 2. I actually really, really liked those 2 together, to the point when at the very, very end, when the number 2 guy gets killed, I was like, oh, I actually liked him. It's like, because he's so loyal to El Guapo, and like he's just always there, kind of like, El Guapo, I think they mean this, which usually he gets yelled at. But I really liked his character. Yes, there's some crazy little antic things halfway through the film with like the singing bush and the invisible swordsman. But to me, I think that is what makes the comedy trio work, because that's them just doing ad-lib stuff, which I know you're not a big fan of the whole ad-libbing in a movie. But I think that stuff works really well. And then, of course, the campfire song, which is, to me, the one part of the movie I remember most as a kid, was when they're singing, it's not Blue Moon.
No, it's a made-up song. I don't remember.
Yeah, but like, and you have all the animals, and you have the little turtle, like the fake turtle. I really enjoy this movie. This is a kind of, to me, like it's a feel-good movie because it reminds me of my childhood, and I really like Three Amigos. I know you don't like it nearly as much as I do, but what are your thoughts of Three Amigos?
This is the movie that taught me the word plethora. That's all I remember about this movie. No,
I have a plethora of pinatas. What does that mean?
so that's the number one thing I think of when you say this movie. That word pops into my mind.
Kind of like Last Samurai was soccer.
This is a movie. This is not a movie that gives you any surprises at all. This is a movie that you know exactly what you're getting when you go into it because you watch this movie. It's absolutely Steve Martin doing his Steve Martin shtick, Chevy Chase doing his Chevy Chase shtick, and Martin Short doing his Martin Short shtick. Just put them all in one movie together, and there you have it. So, like you said, it comes down very much to whether or not you enjoy them and their styles of comedy. Now, when I was a kid and I first saw this movie, I remember just loving this movie. I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And I watched it like all the time. So having not watched it in a long time, I was really hesitant because I'm like, man, I know these people are going to annoy me and I'm going to hate this movie. And surprisingly, it mostly still holds up. I mean,
really
yes, they're all
does.
doing their what? You laughing at me?
No, I said it does. It really does.
Because I mean, yes, they're all doing their shtick, and yes, it can get a little obnoxious and annoying at parts. They go over the top, but you know, I think made this movie to be kind of an all audiences kind of thing. So yes, it appealed maybe to more me as a kid. Like kids might find some as funnier now, but also the fact that since this movie we've had decades more movies from these people doing the same shtick, so it probably wasn't as tired back then as some of it is nowadays. That being said, I don't think that any of them are bad in it. I think there's more funny than there is it's not funny. Some of the things, like you said, that you talked about, like the swordsman and the singing bush, it gets a little weird there, but even those I didn't dislike. It was just a little goofy, but there was some of that sprinkled throughout the whole movie. Yeah, I mean, this is a movie that I honestly expected to be lowering my rating on rewatch, and I didn't. I mean, it didn't go up, but I was like, you know what? This actually is still amusing.
Plus, it's the only movie or the only rendition of My Little Buttercup that I actually enjoy. Because and
There's a lot more people. Now, I don't know if I didn't know them at the time or if I just forgot they were in it, but I mean, so many other people in it.
Are you talking about the main scene when they're in Hollywood?
Well, yeah. Phil Hartman and
John Lovett.
John Lovitz is in there. Joe Mantegna, I forgot he was in this movie. It's just like all these people. I'm like, oh, I forgot these people were in this.
Because I mean, frankly, back then they were nobodies.
I'm sure they were, because I don't think I knew at the time when I watched credits. This time, you notice it was like produced by Lord Michaels, and so I think this was the time. I think right about this time is when John and Phil started on SNL, and Chevy and Martin had left it. So it's kind of the.
I mean, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you have 5 SNL actors, if not more, at some point, maybe sprinkled through the film.
Well, Steve Martin was technically never an SNL cast member, but
oh, come on, he's basically an SNL character.
He was an SNL cast member, kind of like Alec Baldwin and Justin Timberlake are. They just show up a lot. And John Goodman too.
Yeah, they're basically recurring characters,
like honorary cast member. Yeah,
exactly. But no, I really enjoy it. Like, one of my favorite parts of the film, outside of the ones that I already mentioned, is definitely when they finally realize that it's real. I love when Steve Martin goes up to the number 2 guy and he's like, "Let me see that gun. This is real. I'm taking this." And they finally realize it's real. They just start crying and stuff like that. Like I said, these guys are so great. But I would say, here's the thing: if they had just not done the TV show, I probably wouldn't think of Steve Martin and Martin Short that fondly, because they were great in the mid-90s. And
I don't think none of these actors have done anything since the 90s that I've enjoyed. That I mean, there's probably something that I'm forgetting, but for the most part, it's like.
I mean, Chevy had Community, so he was the most recent stuff that he's done something. But then he went full Chevy, and now he's basically nowhere anymore now. And then Steve Martin. I mean, I'm trying to think of like what was the last good Steve Martin thing, and I'm thinking,
oh no, he's one of those I've always put on my list, like with Eddie Murphy. That's debatable for some people, and Bill Murray. That like basically they stopped acting after the 90s because all the stuff after that was like very mediocre to bad.
I think after Father of the Bride, like, yes, he did a lot of things, but I was like, that was his last really good movie, was The Father of the Bride, because like you have Cheaper by the Dozen and like Bringing Down the House, all that stuff. And then Martin Short, it's like, okay, Inner Space. What else?
Steve Martin. I'm going back to unless you want to count Prince of Egypt, which is also him and Martin Short. I like Bowfinger, and then you're going back to Father of the Brides. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't think of really Martin Short outside of Inner Space, which we talked about on the show. I like him. It's just, but you can only take him in small quantity. We even said Inner Space.
Even movies I like he was in what? I don't know if you ever saw the movie Get Over It with Kirsten Dunst and Ben Foster. I really enjoy that movie.
Yeah. Where they're doing the
It's like a Shakespeare.
Yeah, and Cisco's in it and all that.
I really enjoy that movie. I think it's a ton of fun. Martin Short's in that, and he's over the top in that movie. So.
Well, Martin Short's always good in like cameos and small parts. It's when he stars in a film.
Yeah.
For the most part is when Martin Short like is too much. Like we did the Santa Claus 3 and he was like Jack Frost. Like it doesn't work and stuff like that. But like I said, in this film, I think it was perfect. All three of them together and the way they did everything. Like you know me, I'm not a big Westerns guy, but I like this film. I really do. And they're like just their antics are they work. They work. And like I said, I can't say like people today who didn't live in the 80s and early 90s where this comedy was very prevalent would like this. But for anyone who liked these kinds of films or this kind of comedy and they hadn't seen Three Amigos, this is not there.
For its time, it was like the early Jim Carrey movies or the early Adam Sandler movies. It was that kind of thing back then.
I mean, I wouldn't put them with those films personally, because especially with Ace Ventura and Adam Sandler, because they're going off a whole other kind of comedy aspect. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of more like 80s comedy at its peak with those three, and then you put them in this kind of situation, which is very much like The Man Who Knew Too Little, Bill Murray. They think they're in this one thing, except they figure it out halfway through that, and then they decide, hey, we're just gonna try to do this. Whereas Bill Murray was never figured it out throughout that film. But yeah, I'm glad that you liked it, because I was fully afraid that I was gonna have to defend the hell out of Three Amigos against you in this.
I will say, when it first started out, and all three of them, but especially Chevy Chase, is kind of doing his usual shtick, and I'm just like, oh, it's just going to be an hour and a half of this. But then, there was enough scenes in there that I really enjoyed that, yeah.
Plus, I love this song. Both times when they just let the go, it's like, this works. This works for me. Three Amigos, is it on anything?
Nope. No.
I had the DVD because I liked the movie, so I got to watch it from there. But it is rentable if you like any of these three actors, or if you just watch Only Murders in the Building, which is going to get a second season, by the way. So, and you want to go back and watch these two younger, even though Steve Martin still looks old because of his hair. We have talked about Steve Martin because we brought up his hair on a previous episode. I remember that now. I can't remember what it was, but we brought up. Oh no, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I was like, yeah, I know we've talked about Steve Martin. But if you guys want to check back on these three, back when they were younger and really at the height of their comedic talents, check out Three Amigos. It's probably a $2-3 rental on Amazon. I think that's worth it. I think it's worth a $2-3 watch. But definitely check out the Three Amigos. You will not be disappointed. Next, we are moving on to our feature film. It is our only non-80s movie. We are talking about a film, the sequel to a horror. I'm going to call it a classic now since it's been over 20 years. It's been over 20 years. This is 25th anniversary
24.
for the first film.
It's 97. The first film was 96.
First film,
97.
96, yeah. This is the 24th anniversary of the film. So yeah, I'm going to call the first film a horror classic. We are talking about Scream 2. Scream 2 came out December 12th, 1997, had a budget of $24 million, had a weekend opening of $32.92 million. It was number one its opening weekend, its only weekend number one, and had a finished box office of $172.36 million, $101.36 million domestic, and $71 million international. Now, Scream, like I said, it is now a classic. It is a horror classic. It's Wes Craven, to me, I'm not going to say at his best because obviously you got Nightmare on Elm Street, but at his meta level, it is Wes Craven at his best. I mean, Scream is iconic for many reasons. How many things have tried to spawn off of what Scream captured? Scream spawned 4 films, soon to be a 5th, coming out in next month. It spawned a TV series, which I watched the first 2 seasons, and it was fine. And season 3 came out at some point, and I didn't even know it came out because I think they put it on like Paramount Plus or something. But Scream is. We're gonna take Scream 3 out of the equation. Scream's a great franchise.
The thing is, even Scream 3 being the weakest entry is still a decent film.
It's a decent
But
film.
anyway, we're not talking about that.
It's the Parker Posey of it all, and the incredibly weak Scott Foley villain. And I'm gonna say this, but I'm not gonna explain why until I let you do your spick. If it wasn't for one thing, kind of two-ish things, but one thing, I would say that Scream 2 is better than Scream.
Wow.
And I have my reasons. But, Brian, let's go to you first. Scream 2.
So yeah, I mean, Scream obviously came out and basically reinvented the horror genre. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, before that, it had been nothing but these unstoppable killer villains with Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and all this stuff. And this one basically changed the entire genre. It spawned, hundreds of knockoffs of varying degree of quality. None of them as good as the original, of course.
It brought back the spoof movies.
Yeah, but they were smart to follow this up fast with Scream 2. Like I said, came out only a year later because they wanted to strike while the iron was hot. And so it very well could have been just like a crappy sequel they turned out. But I mean, it's actually, I think I wouldn't go so far as to say it's better than the original, but I enjoy it almost as much as the original. The one thing I remember about this movie is before it came out, like months before it came out, when they were still making it. This is before like the internet's still in its infancy, basically. This is 1997. A friend of mine got a hold of this a script, an early draft of the script, which back then is unheard of because it's not an internet thing. It's just people photocopied it and sent it on and on and on. Still have it right here. Ironically says do not copy.
This is the first time I'm hearing about this.
Yeah, the thing is, I love this thing because the funny part is now after they found out it leaked, I think they changed a lot. Now I don't know if they changed it because of the leak or they changed because the scripts changed. This was an early draft of it. There's a lot of stuff the same. There's a lot of stuff changed as well.
Okay, now great. Before you go into this, guys, we're gonna spoil the shit out of this. So if you've never seen Scream 2, granted it's 24
That's
years.
the main thing is they changed the whole villain. They changed the killers at the end. It was a whole different.
So who was the villains in the script that you have?
In the ending of it, it was her boyfriend Derek, the obvious choice, and her roommate or friend Hallie. They were killers, but then it still had Mrs. Loomis come and she killed them both, and then she ended up being the final one. But then Cotton Weary actually did try to kill Sidney, saying, hey, I can be the hero and stuff. He didn't turn out to be the hero in this like he was in this movie. He actually ended up being the killer, the final killer, even though he wasn't the original killer.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff in here, like the Heather Graham's part. They wanted to get Lisa Silverstone for that. Luke Wilson playing Skeet Ulrich's part in the movie within the movie. They were going to try and get Johnny Depp for that, which would have been hilarious because Skeet has always been looked at as a Johnny Depp knockoff.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah,
that would have been perfect.
But anyway, so I just had to share that with you. That was fun.
I also love in that scene. I remember watching because I literally just got done watching before we shot this. In that moment where they're interviewing Tori Spelling before they show the clip, she spoils the whole fucking movie, and the movie just came out.
Well, and the scene they perform in that clip they show on whatever show she's on,
pitch perfect from.
It's private dialogue in a scene that no one else knows about except for Sidney. She clearly didn't cooperate with the filmmakers. So,
which also, I'm surprised she didn't sue because they used her real name in the film. Which I'm like, don't you have to change their name?
I guess maybe public events you can.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's a movie within a movie, so that it is whatever. But it's one of those things where like today's standards, like there's no way they'd use Sidney Prescott's real name. It's like not a chance. Like I'm sure that Casey's family or Drew Barrymore's family in the film would have probably sued. There's no way Stab would have gotten made like that. They would have had to change so much stuff.
Yeah, but that's just But I mean, like I said, it's a movie that very easily could have been just like, hey, let's turn out a quick sequel. But it actually, it was similar enough that it had all the same tone to it, the same flavor, the same kind of humor to it, the same approach. But they added enough new to it, a twist that it kind of felt fresh. It didn't feel like just another one, which it very easily could have done as well. So I mean, I really enjoyed the movie. I think bringing in Liev Schreiber as Cotton Weary was a great addition.
I mean, he was in the first one.
Well, I mean, he had a bigger part in this one. I meant to actually bring him kind of more into the main, not really main cast member, but you know what I mean. I was amused by how many Friends references there were because I mean, this is not Friends directly, but it was clearly at the height of Friends because Courtney Cox obviously, but then they reference
Jennifer
David
Aniston.
Schwimmer, they reference Jennifer Aniston. It's like, okay, we get it. You're picking on your friends.
Yeah, it was a nice tip of the hat kind of
But
thing.
then you have, the one of our favorites, Timothy Olyphant, is in this movie. Love him in this movie. This is probably the first place I saw him. I don't know what he'd done before this. I didn't.
I
take a
would
look
say
at it.
this was probably the first introduction for Timothy Olyphant for a lot of people.
Yeah, because I think there was this and then Go. I think might have been the first movies that I saw him in. Yeah, before this, he'd only ever been in A Life Less Ordinary and The First Wives Club. So there you go.
So yeah, Scream 2 was our introduction to Timothy Olyphant.
Well, I saw Life Less Ordinary, but I don't remember him in it. So it must have been a bit part. But yeah, I mean, this I think is an excellent movie. I think it's very well done. I like the whole movie within a movie aspect. So I thought that was kind of fun. And of course, they kept that going throughout the later sequels. I am curious to hear your take on what you think might make it better.
Okay, so this is what I love about Scream 2. It builds on the events of Scream 1. And I think that also is because they churned it out so quickly within a year that there wasn't all this time in between for Wes Craven to kind of go off.
It was almost just like continuing.
Exactly. And the reason why I love that is look at the characters. Their character progression from the first film to the next film are actual great growths. You've got Courtney Cox as Gail. She struck while the iron was hot at the end of the first film. Now she's kind of fizzling out. And she's desperate to kind of find another kind of hook. Cotton's still kind of, he's a free man, but he's trying to grab on to any.
Still trying to kind of clear his name kind of thing and get his fame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of becoming this leech and this kind of creeper guy. Nev or Sydney is trying to forget, but obviously people won't let her forget when people prank call on her, stuff like that. And when stuff starts happening, there's this one moment. I love this moment. I think Nev does it beautifully. It's when the killer tries to attack her and he ends up attacking Derek, and he escapes, and Dewey's taking care of Derek's arm, and you have this shot of Sydney and the music hits perfectly of her just kind of going, fuck, it's happening again. And you have this moment of just washing over Nev Campbell's performance there of she's never going to escape this. This is her life now. And her kind of owning it. And then there's that moment with her talking to her theater director going, I don't believe you as a survivor. And she just has this, I'm tough enough, kind of thing. And that's Nev or Sydney owning this because she knows that she needs to own this role. Sydney Prescott or Nev Campbell's performance, exponential growth perfectly through this film. Jamie Kennedy in this film, I think, is way better because he's
still mad about that.
That he died?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Your favorite character when they kill him all.
Absolutely. He was the one he should have survived. I love his character throughout this whole film. Obviously, the great theater scene where they're all talking about sequels. That's great. Joshua Jackson's in there for
Well, that's the thing is that, I mean, they already were doing their kind of, send up their meta take on horror movies, but then to take this and do it not only the same thing, but also to make it like a meta take on sequels, I thought was kind of clever. Yeah. So
I love that. And then of course you got, like I said, Joshua Jackson's in it for like 2 seconds. Sarah Michelle Gellar. I think the cast around the main cast is better in this than it was in the first film. Not a knock on Rose McGowan, but it's Rose McGowan. Come on. I mean, you got Sarah Michelle Gellar, you've got Joshua Jackson, you've got Timothy Olyphant, you've got Jerry O'Connell. I mean, I can keep going with this.
Jada Pinkett Smith, Omar Epps.
Jada Pinkett Smith, Omar Epps. Hell, I'm blanking on Portia de Rossi.
Oh, de Rossi, yeah.
Yeah. I could keep going. This has got a great cast around. Is Bellamy the cameraman?
The cameraman was I don't know who that was.
I'm blanking. I thought it was
Dwayne Martin as Joel.
Dwayne Martin. I thought it was Bellamy. But he's great in this role. They gave him some great lines. I love the cast 1,000 times more than I did in the first film. Plus, the scenes, the kills, everything. There are 2 scenes in this film that I think both together are better than the most scary scenes of the first film. First off, you got the opening, the movie theater scene, which in that hectic craziness, yeah, that totally makes sense. The killer would pull off a kill like there and no one do anything about it. Why? Because you have all these idiots going around doing it. That's a beautiful, beautiful scene.
I want to talk about the first scene of the movie. That is my nightmare. That is
absolutely.
for a movie that claims to be all about their love of movies, this is so disrespectful. I mean, if I went to a movie like that and people were yelling and screaming and running around and throwing things, I would lose my shit.
And what's funny is if you put on the subtitles, you hear people go, "Sit down, stop doing that."
But there's
to
like 100 people doing it. So I was like,
oh yeah, but it was a sneak preview, all this kind of stuff. But to do that scene,
but
that
the way, yeah,
way,
to have her like being murdered there, people think it's just part of the show.
and they thought it was a whole plot and like a whole like.
Well, and actually, I hate to, don't want to keep referring to it, but
Yeah.
in the script, because like you know how like when she gets stabbed and she goes up on stage and people like all of a sudden get quiet and they like realize what's really happening. In the script, like she goes up there and then she goes and then she like basically falls down and dies and they all erupt into cheers. And I'm like, why? They should have left that in because that was like people think
They
it's
did
part of
that
the
in
show.
Scary Movie though.
Yeah,
they did that in Scary Movie. I don't think the cheer thing would have worked, but
which I can't watch this movie, that Omar Epps' death, without picturing
of what actually happened. I agree. If you guys know what we're talking, don't know what we're talking about, watch Scary Movie 1.
Yeah.
But that scene is pitch perfect. It's better than the Drew Barrymore scene. I'm not saying Drew Barrymore scene's not bad. I'm saying this scene tops that. Then you have the whole chase sequence inside the film building with Courtney Cox and the killer, where she's in the soundproof room and they're mixing, and she's just missing them, and then she's hiding in like the was it the room with I think it's the tech room. And he's on, and the killer's on the outside, and Dewey goes in, and he's getting stabbed. She can't hear him, and they're having that moment where she's having to watch him die. Well, he doesn't really die, but watch that moment. That scene is a beautiful scene. It's incredibly well done, better than anything they did in the first film. Then you have the scene in the car with Hallie and Nev where they crash. First off, awesome kill for the FBI agent as well. But having to have Nev crawl over the killer to escape. Never anything in the first film where you're that like tense, like oh my god kind of thing. Now, granted, it kind of got ruined with the telegraph of he's not in the car. What? Hop out, stab. Like that part was like, oh, you kind of ruined that moment. But those three scenes heightened are better than anything that Scream 1 did. Granted, it's a sequel. They're building off of what they made. But here's the thing that makes Scream 2 not better than Scream 1. Scream 1 was fantastic because of the twist and the killers. Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich were the perfect killers. Their motives, everything about it, the reveal of it was pitch perfect in terms of writing a film. Scream 2, Timothy Olyphant's Mickey, perfect. When Oliphant shows up and he goes full psycho with it, which psycho, we talked about that last week. This was the perfect moment. Timothy Olyphant fucking murders this scene. Explain his motives of what he's trying to do, where he's going, how he's doing things. And then him being so also, for the most part, intuitive of where Nev's going to go. When she tries to turn, he's like pulls the gun like, no. And he's staying super just like Timothy Olyphant is killing this scene. And then you have that moment where she's like, you forgot about something about Billy. I fucking killed him. And like all that great fucking scenes right there. Then it gets ruined with Laurie Metcalf as Mrs. Loomis. The twist of Laurie, pretty much this movie is for me perfect from beginning to Loomis or to the Mickey reveal. And then as soon as Gail comes through the door with Laurie Metcalf's Mrs. Loomis is when the movie falls apart. This is literally, there's not a single fucking moment in this film that I believe that Laurie Metcalf is one of the ghost faces. There's never a moment in this damn film that Laurie Metcalf is in a ghost face outfit. No, I don't buy it.
That's one of my things about this movie and this whole series, honestly, because I agree with you that I liked it.
I got more to say, but keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to finish?
No, I wasn't done. That was the tip of my fucking
I
iceberg.
said you want to finish. You want me to?
Oh yeah. Let me finish so I can stay on my tangent. Laurie Metcalf, horrible. I'm not saying her performance was horrible. This to me is the downfall of the Scream franchise. Why does everything have to be about her fucking mother? The first movie, fine, makes sense. You know, Billy's dad slept with Sydney's mom, blah, 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 blah. You could have made this movie perfect by keeping it in the thing of violence in films and cinema, and that's where we were going with it. But The other killer, and your script kind of pointed out to it, should have been Cotton. Cotton should have been going the way that I would have wrote this, and I know it's easy to say, "Oh, you're writing it now. Why didn't you do it then?" Cotton should have been the number 2 killer with Mickey, using Mickey as a ploy. If he could get the interview with Sydney, then he becomes the hero. If Sydney continually keeps shutting him out like she did in the movie, then I'm taking her fucking out because she ruined my life. And there's the twist that you could have had with the film. Because I'm sorry, Cotton, what amounted to his character? Nothing. He just ended up becoming the first girl killed or first guy killed in the 3rd film. Nothing came of the Cotton character. Having him be the inevitable killer in the 2nd film would have made more sense. It would have made more logical sense because his life got ruined by Sydney. Once again, connected to his mother. Keeping Mickey in the mix, Mickey's perfect mix, but having Cotton use Mickey to kind of do all the dirty work for him and then kind of stay on the outlines like, well, if Sydney helps me, I'm going to become the savior, I'm going to become the hero, and I'm going to have Mickey just kind of be the fall guy, to, oh, she keeps fucking pushing me aside, she keeps making me look innocent and all this stuff, and then the twist is, hey, this is on you. You could have survived this, you could have done this, but because you did, which they kind of teased it, but the Laurie Metcalf of it all ruins it. And then in the 3rd film, they go even further with it, with the fucking half-brother shit. And it's like, literally, the whole basis of Scream is based off of a mother who slept around. And it sucks, because this franchise is so much better than that. And this movie could have been perfect and succeed the 1st film if Cotton was the 2nd killer. And by having it be Laurie Metcalf's Billy Lewis, because there's nothing in this movie that's believable. Even the whole chase scene on the stage with her. There's not a single moment in this film that I believe that Laurie Metcalf's Mrs. Loomis was a killer, because she's sloppy and she's uncoordinated and she's weak. Plus, not to mention that
to be fair, Ghostface has always been uncoordinated.
but throughout the whole film, as I'm watching, I'm like, I believe that's Timothy Olyphant. There's never a film where I go, where's Laurie Metcalf? No, there was never a moment where Ghostface was Laurie Metcalf, but there were tons of times like, that's definitely Timothy Olyphant. And then not to mention that Laurie Metcalf shoots Timothy Olyphant once, hits him point blank, then shoots 2 more times and doesn't hit him. Because she shoots him 3 times, but he only gets shot once. He gets shot here.
Back up at the end. Yes.
But the thing is, she shot him point blank 3 straight times, and she only hit him 1 time. This movie could have been perfect, but the twist fucked up. Same thing with Scream 3. Outside of Parker Posey's horrible performance, it was going really, really well until Scott Foley became this whiny little bitch half-brother killer, and I was like, you fucked this whole thing up. Scream 4, I think, is actually really good. Scream 4 doesn't get talked about. I think Scream 4 is actually a really, really solid film. But anyway, go on with that. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think Scream 2 had a chance of being better than Scream 1, because I think everything up to the Laurie Metcalf twist, Scream 2 is better than Scream 1. Then that happened, and it fell apart. Go ahead.
Okay, so a couple things. Laurie Metcalf, I think, especially in the end, plays it a little too cartoony. That. Cotton Weary, I do want to say that 2 things about Cotton, his ending in the movie, was that, one, I liked the moment where they were all trying to interview her, and she goes, go talk to Cotton. He was the hero. He kind of she gave that to him, like, here's your fame and stuff, and he's kind of like gave her a nod, like, cool, thanks, we're good now. I liked that scene there. But at the same time, until she agreed to the interview, he was still considering killing her. So it's like,
why him being the killer would have made sense.
Well, that's just it. It's like, she's just gonna forgive that. Like, oh, if I didn't agree to do this for him, he was going to kill me probably. It's like, you're just gonna let that slide. So there's that. As far as who ended up being the killer, I don't know if I call it a problem. I think one of the problems that the Scream series, all the movies have, is that, and actually it's not all their knockoffs too, are that they try so hard to keep the audience guessing and to like make sure they don't guess, nobody's going to predict who the killer's going to be, that I'm pretty sure they make these movies to, like, up until the last scene, they can just pick a name out of a hat and goes, and the killer is this person, because it's like, it doesn't seem like they're actually built. It's like when people are running around in the costumes, it's not Timothy Olyphant, it's not Laurie Metcalf. They aren't paying attention to how tall or short or agile or sloppy somebody is.
Yeah, because that's the problem. Is there's
Because
no
even they don't know who the killer is going to be in the end. It's
there's
like
no killer as short as Laurie Metcalf in the film.
right. I mean, they can take the script. Oh, well, that's okay. We'll reshoot the last scene. Now the killer is these two people instead, and while I mean they came up with reasonable justifications, things like that, it's not. I would almost rather it be slightly more predictable. Like if you were really paying attention, you could pick up on clues rather than just getting to the end and they pull a name out of a hat of which one's the killer. So that's always been a little bit of a problem with the Scream movies.
The problem is that, and you chalk it up to the internet now being too spoilery.
Yeah,
they need to pick who the killer is to start, and then build the story around.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Which I think is what they did with the first film. Is they're like, this is what the killers. It's going to be these two. Here's why. Let's build from that. Where I think in this one, clearly they had a script in the mindset that it was Mickey was going to be the killer no matter what.
Yeah, because the original one, I mean, because the original movie, you never thought there could be two killers. You're just thinking there's a killer out there.
Yeah.
And so so whenever somebody was around while the killer was around, you're like, well, I guess it's not this person. Oh, I guess it's not this person because he's around and somebody was killed across campus or whatever. And so they did that. In this movie, they do the same thing, but it's like because there's probably a second killer, that every single character is in a scene where there's also the killer around, and so you're like, okay, you're not fooling me again. I know that this person's still a suspect.
It's one, like I said, I love Scream 2, but I fucking hate the last 5 minutes. The last 5 minutes are
I will say I felt the ending was a little sloppy, but it doesn't stop me from loving this movie. Not as much as the original, but I very much enjoy this.
I think up to that 5 minutes, Scream 2 succeeds in beating Scream 1, or at least being one of those, like they said, a sequel surpassing the first film, like they were talking about in the theater class, until the end. Basically up until the reveal of Laurie Metcalf's character. I think everything Mickey was doing was perfect. And then fucking Laurie Metcalf walks through the door and the movie just goes down the drain. Kind of like Paranormal Activity for me, where everything was perfect till that last half second. It's like, you son of a bitches, you guys were going so well, and then you had to do the thing. It's like, anyway, Scream 2, it's on Paramount Plus.
On Paramount Plus, or if you don't have that, you can watch it with ads painfully on Pluto TV and Roku channel.
And they are forever long and repetitive. Next, we're going to go into Brian's movie. This is a movie that I have always heard about, but I have never seen until just now. So I really had nothing to go off of except for the title, and I really didn't know what to expect from the title. So I really went into this movie without knowing at all what this film was about, which was weird for me to go into that moment. But we are talking about the 1987 comedy, I'd say dark comedy, based off of the way the film is. Throw Mama from the Train. Throw Mama from the Train came out December 11th, 1987. Had a budget of $14 million. Had a weekend opening of $7.31 million. Number one its opening weekend. Its only week at number one. And had a finished box office of $57.91 million. Yeah, Brian, I had never seen this film, so take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, Throw Mama from the Train is sometimes referred to as a remake of Strangers on a Train. And it kind of is, but not really, because they actually discuss the movie, within the movie and how that's what I'm saying. They discuss it, and it like inspires the events that end up happening in this movie. But at the same time, it is basically a remake. The basic plot of it being that Billy Crystal's character, he just hates his ex-wife, who basically has stolen his book. He's an author, and she basically stole his book, published under her own name. Now she's getting rich and famous. Owen, played by Dan DeVito, just hates his super controlling, obnoxious mother that lives with him, and he wants her dead. So he misconstrues something that Billy Crystal's character says in talking about writing the book, and he thinks they want to crisscross, trade murders. I'll kill your mom, or I'll kill your wife. You kill my mom. There's the basic plot of the movie. You wouldn't know it's a comedy from that description, but it basically is. This, for me, is Billy Crystal kind of at the prime of Billy Crystal. I mean, there was this, and then 2 years later was When Harry Met Sally. This is when he was making, for me, a lot of very funny movies. He made some unfunny stuff before this. He made some unfunny stuff in the years since then. But this was Billy Crystal in his prime. I really enjoy his brand of comedy in this era. It's very good. Danny DeVito is perfect for this. Danny DeVito, also the director of this movie. This is kind of his first big studio movie. He'd done one smaller one, but this is kind of his first big movie, and I thought he knocked it out of the park. In the years since then, he kind of stayed with that dark comedy kind of angle. He did like War of the Roses and Death to Smoochie and some other stuff. But I think he's a good director and a good actor. Anne Ramsey, who most people know as Mama Fratelli in The Goonies, phenomenal in this. I believe she got an Oscar nomination for this movie. I think
She got an Oscar nomination for screaming "Owen" the whole time. Yeah,
hey, she played the role she was cast and she
I
played
know.
it excellently.
God.
But that she's great in this. It's got Kate Mulgrew, isn't it? Rob Reiner shows up briefly. A ton of other supporting players, but it's definitely a dark comedy. It's not a long movie. I think it's under 90 minutes long. So it kind of gets in, gets out. It's a good just hour and a half of comedy if you don't mind, being a little bit on the dark side. But you're seeing it for the first time. What did you think?
Yeah, like I said, I had no idea what the film was, so when I heard "Throw Mom from the Train," I'm like, "Where's the train?" And it didn't show up the last 10 minutes of the movie. I was like,
I think they put that in the title because it was from Strangers on the Train. So
well, that's also the name of the book at the end of the film. But it was always like, there is no train in this movie. It's like, why
the whole movie isn't going to be on the train.
Well, no, but I figured that we would get to a train at some point. But yeah, like I said, I had no idea what the film was. I made sure not to read anything about it and just go in completely dark. Like I said, I love Billy Crystal. He's another one like with Steve Martin and Martin Short and Chevy Chase, where I love their brand of comedy. Now, granted, he hasn't done anything a lot outside of like Monsters Inc. in a very long time, but I love Billy Crystal. Danny DeVito, he's an actor that I wasn't super crazy about when I was younger, because to me he was just Penguin and that was it. But obviously, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I have grown to love Danny DeVito because of Always Sunny. And so seeing him, it's weird seeing him kind of younger. Now, granted, he still looks pretty much like he does now, except, older. But it's...
Somehow he just always... I think he was born looking like 45 years old, and he's looked that way for his whole life. So now he looks a little bit older with the gray hair, but yeah.
Exactly. But it was weird seeing him just look younger in this, because even... like, what was it, like 5 years later? Like, he's the Penguin, and he looks like normal Danny DeVito.
How old do you think he was in this movie?
26.
Whoa, nothing. 33. 33.
Yeah. Wow, I wasn't gonna go too high with it, but yeah, this movie is a weird movie, but it's also a dark comedy, so you got to kind of go with that. I mean, it was weird because you don't know how to treat Danny DeVito's character, because he's kind of like a simpleton, but he's also a stalking.
He's simple, and he's annoying. I mean, like he's a kind of stalkery in that, but at the same time, he's kind of like when you talk about the coin collection with his dad, he's got kind of this sweetness to him, and it's
but
like
then he also does the things where he's like stalking Billy Crystal throughout the film, and it's just like, wait, so is he pretending to be a simpleton? Or is he actually really this?
No, he's not a bad guy. I think he's just somebody who wants a friend and wants somebody to talk to and stuff, and it just kind of comes across stalkery.
Yeah, he definitely does. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of funny moments in there. Now, granted, like I said, I am not a fan of the Goonies. So I'm not. So Anne Ramsey to me is just a. So having
wait till December to tell me this.
You've known this. This has not been news. But having Anne Ramsey in it didn't really sell anything for me, and having her just go, I was like, oh my god, shut the fuck up.
You do that so well. That's for your next Halloween costume.
Oh my god. I mean, it was grating on the ears. Like, granted, I watched this and I had a migraine all day, so this movie did not make me feel any better. This movie does a lot of things that a lot of older films do, and I say older films like 80s. It's unnecessarily loud just to be loud. There's a lot of moments where, like when DeVito goes to Hawaii, and it's just blatantly like the loudness of like his surroundings. Like there's a time where he's walking down the street, and it's like random animal noises, random music noises, random people talking, it's just blaring through. It's like, that's not necessary. You don't need this unnecessary just miscellaneous noise all over the place, like the sound editing.
Check your sound levels on your system, maybe.
No. I was watching on my laptop.
I didn't notice this at all.
Crazy sound levels. And then, like when you have the supposed moment where that you think he pushed the ex-wife, and then it goes to the guy going, like just blaring loud. I was like, oh my God, we get it. Like, calm down. Like, granted, I'll chalk up the migraine of watching this, but it did not make me like this movie anymore. But when we finally got to the point, to me, I think the saving grace of this film, to me, where I actually started to like it, is when Billy Crystal got kind of stuck in Danny DeVito's house, and you started to develop this finally a relationship between them. And then how many times Billy Crystal was like, okay, I'm going to kill her. And then he's like, screw this. And just try. And that's when we really get to kind of the Billy Crystal comedy aspect of the film. Because all the way up to that, it's Billy Crystal just kind of whining and not doing a whole lot, just being Billy Crystal. But when we actually get him and Danny DeVito together in his house, that to me is when the comedy really starts to come into play. And I think that's when the film really starts to work. And everything starts to gel perfectly, even the parts on the train, all the way to the end, especially at the moment where he's like, oh, yeah, I wrote a book. I'm going to New York. And Billy Crystal's like, you slut? He's like, and all this kind of stuff. And then you find out there's a freaking pop-up book, which I think works perfectly in terms of the end of it. But the first half of the film, I wasn't super crazy about personally. But once we got Danny DeVito back from Hawaii, and Billy Crystal had to deal with the situation, I think the movie to me gets exponentially better, and it was a solid comedy after that. So I'm not crazy. I wasn't crazy about the first half, but the second half definitely won me over. But yeah,
I'll take it.
And yeah, Anne Ramsey is annoying as hell, and I could
It's
not.
kind of the point.
It's just that just because you're an annoying actress or actor, it's the
Yeah,
same
you're
argument.
so annoying that you
That's
want
literally
to
the
kill
same
her.
argument. Brian, it's literally the same argument that you and I have had about Tiffany Haddish and Leslie Jones.
And I'd like to kill them too. So yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, don't say she's great and then talk about them being too loud.
She's great for someone who's supposed to be someone you want dead. Yes.
Stick scissors all the way through her ear. but yeah, throw them out from the train. What's it on?
Hoopla, the Roku channel, Tubi TV, and Pluto TV.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to add for your movie?
No.
Okay. We're now going to our final pick. It's our stinker. This movie.
Is it that?
What is?
Is it a stinker?
Oh, hell yes, it is. This is a movie.
Sean loved this.
I
Don't
remember.
believe him.
I remember at a younger age being okay with this film, and then we watched it, and blow me down, it is bad. We're talking about the cartoon adapted live action film Popeye. Popeye came out December 12th, 1980, had a budget of $20 million, had a weekend opening of $6.31 million, number 2 its opening weekend, and a finished box office of $49.82 million. Yeah, this movie is a 69, you said, on Rotten Tomato?
63, I think, something like that. Yeah.
What the fuck are you people
So
smoking?
you both give it like 3.5 out of 4 stars or something like that.
What are you people smoking? This movie is god-awful garbage. It is trash. It is fucking horrible. Brian loved watching this movie.
I love watching Sean watching this movie.
That's what I'm saying. Brian loved watching this movie because he loved.
I think I said to him, my favorite Sean is exasperated Sean. He spent so much time just going, oh.
I hate this movie with a fiery passion, and none of it is Robin Williams' fault. Robin Williams knows the film he's in. Robin Williams knows the homework assignment. It is everything else. Brian, please go.
Okay, so I have not watched this movie in decades.
I probably have not watched this movie since I was like 6 years.
When I was a kid, I thought liking this movie. Now,
Same.
granted, this is before VHS even, so you're at the mercy of whatever's on television at this point. When I was a kid, and also I think we had like the record album of the soundtrack, like this and Annie. For some reason, were like on repeat in my house, so I knew like all the songs by heart. But the irony is, though, that one of this film's biggest weakness is the fact that it's a musical, because the songs in this are so, from the opening song, they're so dreary. It's like want to slit your wrist listening to these songs.
No, slit your wrist whenever Shelley Duvall sings.
Well, and here's the thing: Shelley Duvall, perfect casting as Olive Oyl. Yes, she's annoying, but if they're going for, to be exactly like the cartoon, which is clearly what they want to do as far as casting, she's perfectly cast. Bluto is perfectly cast. Robin Williams, for the most part, I don't know if there's anybody else I would have cast in the role better than him. I don't think they maybe should have toned down on the weird giant biceps, which not bicycle. I understand that's like Popeye's thing, but it just looks ridiculous here.
And the calf muscles too.
Yeah. The thing is, Robin Williams, regardless of what movie he's in, it's just like he spends the entire movie mostly just muttering under his breath, which I guess is kind of Popeye's thing and stuff. But I swear, all of his dialogue in this movie, I'm pretty sure is dubbed in, because you can kind of tell he's just constantly muttering. You can almost see him in a recording studio just recording this.
There's no way the way he's doing it, his voice is projecting loud enough.
Yeah,
hearing.
But and so it's like he almost never like really talks. I mean, obviously there's a few scenes he does like talking to people, but for the most part he's just muttering through the entire movie. Shelley Duvall is doing the olive oil thing, which fine, but they're all playing a very clumsy. I remember Sean said it looked like they were on like a rocking boat or something. So you're constantly
literally. I was saying this to you. I go, I feel like this is a stage play, and they're on like this movable beam.
The gimbal. Yeah.
There's people off curtain doing this because everyone on this movie is drunk because they're
funny and tripping over their own feet. And
it's like no one has their bearings in this film. No one can walk a straight line and save their lives in this film. Continue. It's so fucking annoying.
You want to know who the best actor in the movie is? The baby. The baby was hitting all the marks.
Oh no, the baby kicked ass. The baby knew exactly what he was doing at all times.
I know
that baby. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the story itself was basic and kind of lame. The fact that they made a musical with the worst songs ever that I apparently liked when I was a kid, but I don't know what I was smoking. Like I said, maybe it's just a lack of options at the time, because the songs are horrible.
The song that Shelley Duvall sings is one of the worst songs.
He's large and he's mine.
Large. Say another fucking word, man. Come on.
I'm just gonna clip that and put it on repeat for half an hour. Just Sean going large.
Oh god, it's so bad.
But then I mean, you have even the supporting characters. Like you have Paul Dooley as Wimpy, who apparently is now a villain because he won. Okay, first time he takes the baby because he wants to take him to the track. Fine, whatever. He's kind of there with it. He takes the baby to the track. That happens in like some other. I think The Simpsons did something like that too. But then he essentially sells the baby to Bluto for a bag of hamburgers.
Wimpy is supposed to be Popeye's best friend.
Right. But instead, he's apparently a villain in this movie. He basically sells the baby. And when they finally find him and force him to confess, once he confesses, they're like, okay, you're cool now. I'm like, what? No. He's a criminal.
There's no... And then Bluto literally shows up at Olive Oil's house and just destroys the house because she wasn't home. That's fine. That's no problem. Just obliterates these people's houses, and like I get this, but here's the problem: is that we said it right when the movie started. Like when Popeye shows up at the town and everything happened around him. This is very help me out here, comedy.
I know
type of comedy it is. What?
Sorry?
The type of comedy it is.
I don't know what you're going for.
No, because like when he's walking around town, all the antics, all the stupid shit that's going on with the townspeople, it's very
slapstick,
Harbo and
slapstick.
Oh yeah, okay, slapsticky comedy. I was trying to think of the crew from the early days. You know, the one that Kirk likes.
Oh, the Marx Brothers.
Yes, the Marx Brothers. It's very Marx Brothers-y with its comedy, and it's cringy. You got the one guy who keeps kicking his hat because he can't catch it.
Oh yeah, they spent a good 30 seconds watching somebody kick his hat down the street. It was like, oh my god.
And like everyone in the town has to be doing some weird antic causing destruction, like just the
everything's over choreographed in the background. There's everything going on.
Yeah, like Popeye's trying to eat at this like saloon bar or whatever, and literally everyone is trying to be center picture. Everyone is trying to do something antic heavy to cause the camera to look at them. But you know what? This is not your fucking movie. It's Popeye's movie. Stop trying to steal spotlight from Popeye. It's his film. And everyone in the town's doing it. You got some weird person in the background of a scene making a weird ass face, distracting you to look at them and not focusing on this. I wanted to call them Marks, but the people in the town. Blanking on the terminology. I'm blanking on it, but they're the extra people, the extras.
Oh, the extras. Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, fuck. What I'm blanking on.
I'm trying to help you. I don't know where you're going with it. Okay.
They're just going out of their way. Like if you did that shit in a normal movie today, you're kicked off set. because you're trying to distract the everyone from you when you're supposed to be just walking down a street and not trying to detract from the scene that's going on. In this, everyone is out there trying to make their own scene happen for them, and you're like, you're nothing. You're generic guy number 4 kind of thing, and it's frustrating and it's annoying as hell. And then you have just the shittiest, dumbest dialogue, the most horrible music I've ever heard in a musical. Shelley Duvall is ear-cringingly bad. First off, there's never a moment in this film that you are supposed to believe that Popeye and Olive Oyl like each other. Basically, a baby shows up. They both take basically ownership of said baby, thus fall in love. That's
basically, the movie does that a lot because like the baby shows up and they say, well, I guess we were together when we found him, so I guess we're co-parents now. I don't know.
All the time before that, Olive Oyl was just a fucking bitch.
And even though we had no feelings for each other, suddenly they like each other. Same thing with Popeye. Spoiler alert, by the way. And the Commodore, which is his dad, his long lost dad, Poop Deck Pappy, who at one point he says he doesn't want to acknowledge he has any children. He says, "No, I don't have any kids. I don't know if I have kids. I don't have any kids." Next thing, nothing changes. Nothing changes. Also, he's like, "No, you are my son." Like, wait, what?
Not even 30 seconds pass, and he's describing stuff from
Popeye to say, "No, you are my son." Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, there's nothing. And I was telling Brian, it's like it feels like it's like 4 or 5 episodes mushed into a film. Episode 1 is him arriving to town. Episode 2 is him meeting Olive Oyl.
Yeah, they just thought of different scenes. That's why there was not the growth of the characters or relationships. It was just like we thought of some funny scenes and we put them together.
Yeah, the structure of this film is horrible. The sets are horrible. The acting of everybody is horrible. The music's horrible. The dialogue's horrible. There's nothing redeemingly quality of this film that makes anything good except for the freaking baby.
I will say that the one remarkable thing about this movie is that we didn't realize it was the first feature film starring Kate McKinnon.
Absolutely right. This is
clearly it's not.
Literally,
1980.
not even 2 frames into this. Not even 2 frames of this. Olive Oyl's mom pops up, and Brian and I both go,
like,
"Is that Kate McKinnon?" It's like, it can't be Kate McKinnon. Kate McKinnon was probably like 10 when this movie came out, but this mom Olive Oyl's mom is basically Kate McKinnon. Every time she's on screen, Brian and I go, "All I see is Kate McKinnon."
Every time she came on screen, we're like, "All I see is Kate McKinnon." Yep.
This is Kate McKinnon to a T. And it's one of those things like we're not trying to be funny. No. Literally you watch any Saturday Night Live sketch where Kate McKinnon's being an old woman. It's this mom. It's 100% this mom. I don't know how that happened. I really don't. It's crazy.
It's a weird doppelganger thing. Yep.
Kate McKinnon's a vampire because she apparently is the same age she is now. Back in 86, 87? 1980. So 41 years ago, Kate McKinnon was 41 years old, or however old she is right now, in Popeye. This movie is pretty much one of the worst films I've watched this year. Hands down. This movie, we've watched a lot of bad films.
I don't hate it as much as Sean, but it's not good.
It is horrible. There's not one, outside of the baby, there's not one redeeming quality of this film. Not even Robin Williams, and I love Robin Williams. And even though he knew the assignment, he did the assignment, his performance is just as bad. This movie's the lowest of dog shit. It is garbage. And for people to give this a positive fucking rating, what are you smoking?
This is one of those movies that
level bad.
Even myself, rewatching it now, I was like, okay, maybe back when I was a kid, I enjoyed it. But this is one of those movies where I can say, without nostalgia goggles, it's definitely dog crap.
You were even watching going, I don't even understand how us as kids liked this film.
I did. This is another one of those movies where I don't know their target audience because it would bore the shit out of kids. The music and stuff is, unless maybe some of the slapsticky comedy, I don't know. But at the same time, it's too dumb for adults. I don't know. And it was Robert Altman of all people directed this.
It's horrible, and we won't even get into the octopus thing of it all at the end, or how Popeye basically starts walking on water at the end of the movie. But
sadly, it's also the most accessible movie of the week. It's on HBO Max.
Isn't that how that always goes, though?
It usually is. Yeah.
The worst film is always the most accessible. Anyway, that's our show, guys. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Weekend Crusaders. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, Brian's most anticipated film of the year, West Side Story, is out. Don't know if we'll have a review for it. We will at some point. I'm not probably going to watch it this week.
If nothing else, I'm pretty sure we're talking about it on the year-end show.
Yeah, let's put it this way. Next week's episode, I'll ask him how it is, and he'll give you his little brief because he doesn't like shooting reviews. That'll probably be the first thing you'll hear from us about West Side Story, unless for some reason I go and check it out this weekend, which I probably won't because I'm working way too many hours of work right now to watch.
I work retail in December, so there you go.
What's that?
Because Sean's working retail in December.
Exactly.
So I'm lucky I get him for this hour.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Being the Ricardos on Amazon Prime is out. We may or may not have a review for that. And then also the Sports Film National Champions, which I looked and none of my theaters around me have that film. So it will be a while before I have a review for that one. But next week, this week has Brian's most anticipated film. Next week is my most anticipated film, Spider-Man No Way Home. We will definitely be having a review. And yes, Brian, we will definitely be having a spoiler review with you on the show. We will definitely be talking about this film as well. So be on the lookout for both the spoiler and the non-spoiler review for Spider-Man No Way Home. And then also Guillermo, damn it, say his name, Del Toro. Guillermo Del Toro. I almost said it right. Nightmare Alley. That also comes out. We're not necessarily really excited about it because we really don't know what the hell the movie's about. Plus,
and Guillermo's never really done it for me either. So I mean, I'll see it at some point, but
yeah. And with Spider-Man coming out next week, I mean, come on, we're gonna watch Spider-Man.
Nightmare Alley is the movie that people will see when they feel too snooty to go see Spider-Man. Like, oh, you're seeing that? I'll see this instead.
Exactly. I'm not saying it's a snooty film because cast-wise, it's a lot of people that we like, but it's just we're fucking seeing Spider-Man. Let's be real. But then next week we'll be back for the next episode of the Movie Crusaders where we talk about probably one of the worst films ever made. We'll see if it can top Popeye. We also have a musical classic, I would say.
Another musical.
Yeah. Another musical, but this one's actually a good one. Then we have a comedy, dramedy, family comedy, dramedy film that Brian's picking that I was not necessarily really a fan of when it came out. So we'll see if I change my mind on it. We've got a Oscar favorite sports film that I like that Brian does not like. So we'll see if we can change Brian's mind on it. And then we got a film that has been dubbed the #1 most romantic film of the 1990s, one of the biggest box office hits in movie history. The list goes on and on and on. We're going to be talking about that film, figure out what these movies are, and we will be back next week. We are the Weekend Crusaders. My name is Sean Wasserkrug. That is Brian Michaels. Until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders. Son of a bitch.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.